Focus returns to Karnataka budget 2023. As we mentioned, there was a budget which the Chief Minister termed and Congress has termed as a welfare budget, where the star focus was on the 5 welfare guarantees and, of course, other schemes that the Congress has decided to fund and bolster in the state. Of course, 52,000 crores, the total outlay for these 5 schemes. Focus on backward classes, SC, ST and minorities as well in that budget, along with focus on the Kalyan Karnataka region. Along with, though, as we mentioned, focus on Bengaluru as well. Of course, where's the money going to come in from? It's going to come in from increase in excise duty on alcohol, excise levied on alcohol. It's going to be increase in motor vehicle tax registrations, as well as possible revision of guideline values for property. So what does this overall mean in terms of a deficit budget and increased borrowings as well? Joining us now is Narendra Pani of NIAS. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. And also N.R. Bhanumurthy, Vice Chancellor of the B.R. Ambedkar School of Economics at the Bengaluru University. First to you, Mr. Pani, what do you make of the budget that's been presented today? What would be your rating of the state budget by Chief Minister Siddaramaiah?
I wouldn't go for ratings, but I think it's important when the 5 guarantees were announced, there was a widespread belief that this was an electoral necessity, in which case the issue before this budget was how would those resources be generated. But I think the Chief Minister has gone much further than that, and he's announced many more schemes and many more welfare measures. And I think he has also spoken about those guarantees in terms of a universal basic income. So it's really part of a larger strategy of kind of welfare-led growth that Karnataka is experimenting with, or possibly the Congress might also be moving in that direction. The question really is that how does this work, and is it sustainable? The interesting part of such a strategy is that it's based on the idea that there is considerable inequality now. And based on that inequality, there's nothing wrong in taking money from the rich and passing it on to the poor. And the reason the Chief Minister Siddaramaiah has given for that argument is that 60% of GST comes from the poor in any case, or bulk of the GST comes from 60% of the poor. So the essential argument here is it's coming from them in any case, and it's your duty, therefore, to transfer it back to them. And even in this case, I think nearly half of that 45% or so of that 52,000 crores comes from the buoyancy in GST. So, and then of course, for this to happen, you have to continue the growth process. And in that, the strategy in the budget is that you continue with existing inequalities. The focus is on Bengaluru, and Bengaluru, when the regional inequality is very stark and is a challenge in Karnataka. There's no effort to really reduce that. The main infrastructure schemes you're talking about, whether it's a technology innovation park or any of the other initiatives, are essentially all in Bengaluru. So at one level, he's not challenging the inequality. All that he's saying is that if inequality exists, I can take those resources and put it back as welfare.
Right, interesting that you make that point. I know the point on Bengaluru and knowledge parks as well, which one of the ministers was pointing out is an attempt to create a knowledge-based society and not just setting up like a special economic zone. But we'll get to that in a bit. But first, to the point that you've raised on sustainability. Mr. Bhanumurthy, is this path sustainable? Or is this path designed for an election year budget, given that you've come out of one election, you're heading into a 2024 election? How much is that necessity part of this budget, reflecting on this budget by the Chief Minister?
Well, I think it was very clear from the beginning that the new government is going to focus more on these 5 guarantees. And all of us were worried how the finance minister is going to balance the requirement between the receipts and expenditures. So I must say it's a very fine balancing act, and ultimately the governments are supposed to take care of the welfare needs of the people, but at the same time balancing the growth aspirations. To that extent, I must say that this budget is actually balanced both the capital expenditure as well as the pressures that is going to be coming in terms of implementing these 5 guarantees. So politics is part of the budget, so you cannot separate the politics and the budget. Sometimes it's a political statement, and I think the finance minister, the chief minister, has made a fine balancing act between the politics and economics. And it has taken care of the receipt side. As you rightly pointed out, there was some space in terms of the own tax revenues. And I think the finance minister has taken all the three options were available for him. And even then, if you compare with the neighboring states, you are still taxing much less than the neighboring states. So I still feel that there is some more space for the government to generate little more own tax revenues on the three aspects.
Important point that you make there. I'm going to take the next question again to you. 2 points here. First, the Chief Minister in his budget speech starts by saying that don't look at these as freebies. These are measures made to distribute growth and development benefits equitably amongst the rest of the society. The other, and what the opposition has raised, is also there is no clarity on the revenues that are being generated. For instance, it is not clear how much the increase in the motor vehicle registration charges is going to generate for the state. Stamp duty, of course, there is some indication of those. The borrowings have also increased, which is another thing that the opposition has pointed out. Given that, is this going to be financially sustainable, sir?
First of all, I think we need to make the distinction between the freebies as well as welfare measures. I don't think there will be any opposition if the government suggests that it is going for the welfare measure. I think what we disagree is that if it is a freebie. So you need to understand what is a freebie. In my view, the freebie is any government intervention that doesn't lead to production or productivity in the medium term to long term. So if you look at the 5 guarantees, my personal view, not my institutional view, is that out of the 5 guarantees, I think 4 definitely can be categorized as welfare schemes. But I think one, which is the Gruha Jyoti scheme, which is the free electricity, in a way it is a freebie. So in a way, that is the political pressure every government has to face. In terms of the sustainability, certainly Karnataka is better placed to implement those schemes. My only worry is that the kind of schemes that generally governments come up, it actually lacks the sunset clauses. Except one scheme out of the 4 or 5, all the 4 schemes don't have sunset clauses. I think that is that makes little more worry about in terms of the sustainability. But much more worry for us is that if other states, those who are going for the elections, will try to imitate this, so that is going to be much more concern for a country like ours. But Karnataka is better placed. If you look at any kind of fiscal indicators, whether it is a debt to GDP ratio or fiscal deficit, even if you see today, despite the 5 guarantees, the finance minister is actually budgeting the deficit at lower than what was last year. So I think the government seems to be much more careful in terms of drawing the expenditures as well as revenues. But in any case, the revenue that you talked about is more of a forecast. So we need to wait and see how it works.
Right. How it plays out. Professor Pani, last word to you. Are you concerned? I wish we could discuss the other issues that you picked up, like setting up of knowledge centers and regional inequality. Very important issues, but very limited time here on the show. Your last word, are you concerned about this becoming a trend across the board where not welfare schemes but freebies becomes the catchy, sensational things that will have to be funded by the exchequer?
No, ideally, if you have rapid growth, the need for such welfare schemes will not be as urgent. But if you are not going to have that growth, there is no getting away from the fact that the government, any idea of development cannot sustain itself if you have extreme poverty or some sections, even small sections of the population facing extreme malnutrition. So we have a problem here and we need to address that. I would ideally like it to be done through more sustained growth rather than just by a government commitment. But if that does not happen, there's no getting away from these commitments and the cost that they will bring. If you don't grow and you have these commitments, there are a number of financial and other crises that you will get. But if you can develop a growth strategy that has its focus on ensuring that nobody is really left behind, I think then you are dealing with I think that's the way forward for the country as a whole.
Okay. Okay, fine distinction that you make there. As always, thank you very much, Prof. Sapani and Mr. Bhanumurthy, for joining us and giving us your perspective. That's all we have time for on this show. Of course, our focus on the budget. We'll continue our political focus in the coming days as well. Thanks for watching.